Hi guys, this is a PS because I realized I didn't say something I probably should have said just to make it more clear on the lender situation. So let's just say hypothetically we meet every hurdle. And like the attorney said, normally, even if you can meet all the other hurdles, it dies at the point of the lender. And I forgot an important part because it's not just about paying off all the current loans and then waiting the 5 years for a new loan, but it also makes it impossible to buy or sell in the community unless it's cash. Or there is a caveat to that. Actually, maybe I'll just give you a quick explanation. To the best of my ability, I took my real estate license a long time ago, but just to give you an understanding. So, back at one point, everybody had to have at least 20% down to get a loan because the lenders were not willing to risk 100% of the property. Like, they were only willing to lend 80% because that protected them from losses. So I think it was Roosevelt, and I think it was around World War II, but I'm old and I took my test a long time ago. But they created government backed loans, which just means the government stepped in and said, okay, you're only willing to take 80% risk. We will insure the additional 20%. So if there's a foreclosure, we will cover that 20% difference. So, and that's why there's mortgage insurance and all that with a lot of the loans. So that started it where people could now buy with, I don't know, 5% down, 3% down, even nothing down, and we still have those loans. But that started something new where we have like government-backed mortgages because they're covering that, 20% equity. And what happens is, so we have like Fannie, Freddie, those are the two big ones that would be conventional loans. So if you like look up most of your bank's websites or whatever and you see what the current rates are, it's probably a conventional loan. And then there's also FHA rates and VA, and those are just, I don't even know how to put it. Like VA is for veterans. FHA is really, it's not just for first-time home buyers, but it was really designed kind of for that. So it's only 3% down, and conventional when I first started was a minimum of 5% down, but they now have programs with 3 down or nothing down. But what happens is they all follow the same guidelines and the same rules. Because have you ever had a mortgage and maybe, I don't know, you got your mortgage with like Bank of America, but then someday you get this letter that says, oh, now you make your payment to Countrywide, or, the lenders can change. So what they do, they all follow the same guidelines, and they have to get that government-backed insurance. So they're forced to follow these guidelines, and then they usually bulk them. Like a lender might do loans until they get, I don't know, say 100 or whatever their, program is, maybe 1,000. But they bulk them together, and then they normally don't hold them forever. They normally sell them on the secondary market. And all the loans have to, fit that criteria. And so you cannot just like remove the POA because those loans do not allow it. You cannot do it. You have to pay off that loan or get a new one. And this is my experience because this is not something that's unheard of, maybe dissolving the POA. But in my experience, it was with HOAs and condos. But once there's a lawsuit in that neighborhood, you cannot get any of those regular loans. The only loans that you can get are like private money loans. It could be, I don't know, you call it subprime loans or hard money loans or portfolio lending. It's just smaller companies, and they can make their own rules. But this is what would happen. So let's say there's a condo complex and there's a lawsuit. It freezes anybody from being able to buy there unless they have cash or they do one of these, I'm going to just call it subprime loan. So those are the choices. So it would drive the prices down, which I know a lot of you don't care about. You're like, yay, taxes are going to be lower. But it would take it down, and then the investors would come in with cash, and then when the lawsuit got settled, then it was worth a lot more because supply and demand, right? If you have to sell, and again, I was in San Diego, it was a lot of military. So sometimes they're transferred somewhere and they really have to sell. And if they can't even get what they owe on it, like that's why we started doing the short sales. I don't know what's with the lighting. But anyways, so when this what happened, I mean, there could be a condo that maybe sold for 400 and now it's selling for 220 because nobody can get a loan. I was also a lender, so I was a realtor and a lender, and I could find subprime money to get people loans in that complex if they had 20 to 30% down, normally 30. Occasionally I could find somebody at 20. But let's just say the regular loan is like a 5% interest and 1 point, and 1 point is just 1% of the loan. So a $100,000 loan would be $1,000. The only lenders that would lend there now are portfolio lenders that they want 30% down. They're going to charge you 12 or 14%, and they're going to charge you 5 or 6 points. Sometimes it was worth it to people because they felt like, okay, the lawsuit's probably getting ready to be resolved. I can always refinance and I can buy at this cheaper price. But the point is, like during that 5 years, that's what you're forcing people into. You're forcing people, if they have to sell, to do it, or if they want to buy, if they don't have the 30% down and they're not willing to pay a really high rate, they're not going to be able to. So you're going to kind of freeze this market for 5 years. And there's really no way around that. And there's no way to remove the POA in our situation without notifying every lender. And then every lender would have to release it. And unless they're like this little private lender, they can't release it even if they wanted to, because it would no longer meet the criteria that they trade these loans on. So it's just not possible unless somebody can come in with a lot of cash or people are willing to really pay for it. So in my mind, every single angle that makes it possible to dissolve the POA is like 100 times more than my property's worth. And so I would just move along. I wouldn't have any choice, and I'm not going to do that. I don't know if you see my previous post, but this has happened to me before. I owned a condo, and the condo was not worth much. I had a disabled sister, and it was like the cheapest condo I could find kind of close to me, and I got it, and then the reason it was so cheap is because the HOA was underfunded. So I expected the HOA to go up. What I didn't expect was that someone was going to take it to court. There was a lot of issues. There was railing and porches wood that need to be replaced was getting rickety. But the biggest issue, what took it to court, was there was a pipe that went from the back of the building to the street where you drive, and the HOA was responsible for that pipe. And both the sewer pipe going out and the water pipes coming in were old. And the complex was just trying to maintain, they were cleaning it out often, but I would go to my sister's and you could smell it like eggs in the drain, and sometimes even like black gritty stuff would come out of the drains. But somebody decided to take it to court because they wanted to raise the dues to get a budget to start saving to fix. They already had an estimate, and we're kind of getting there. Like we're getting our estimate for the roads. But they decided that they were not going to pay higher dues because the HOA was not taking care of the repairs. So they took it to court, and they won. And the judge said, the sewer pipe is necessary, and it needs to be done, and it needs to be done within a certain amount of days. And they had to get a couple more estimates. The judge ruled, I can't remember. I think it was short. It might have been 120 days I had to come up with the money. But I didn't have much time to come up with the money, and it was a huge bill. And basically, several people, including me, just walked away because I would have ended up having to get another loan, and there wasn't enough equity in that place. So I would have had to take another loan on my personal residence to pay for that special assessment. Otherwise, I couldn't come up for it, and I didn't want to lose the house I lived in. And my sister wasn't especially happy in that neighborhood anyway. So I decided just to walk away. I walked away. Some people got foreclosed. Some people walked away. And now I just went back there and visited, and I drove by, and the place looks great. Like everything's all fixed up and it's all nice. But it drove anybody that was lower income out. It forced them out. It forced me out. And then it turned it into a whole new community. So I like this community. I like that it's affordable. I like that it's a mix of demographics. I like that it's eclectic. I don't want to force this neighborhood to turn into like an upper scale neighborhood. I like living in this kind of neighborhood. I chose this kind of neighborhood because I want to keep my expenses low. To me, I would rather live smaller and have less stress than be stressing every month about my bills. So all these things have to be considered. So if you want to dissolve the board, think it through, because I don't see how it can be done without making the neighborhood unaffordable and making people lose their homes or coming up with multi-million dollars. And the only way to avoid that is to stop fighting for that and instead try to work all together to keep our expenses down and to keep our neighborhood the way that it is. And that's my 2 cents. And again, I know I'm just one person, but everybody should be considering all these options before you make a decision.